Welcome everyone to the V3 implementation call. Today is September 28th. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedules to be with us this morning. Just as a reminder, these sessions are recorded. We post them on our website and also on our YouTube channel for you to share with others or for you to review topics that you want to go back into or to review something that we've covered. If you haven't already, please update your name in the participant list with your affiliation. This just helps everybody to know who's on the call and who's speaking. It also helps us to make sure to apply participation credit to all of the vendors that seek and maintain NHTSA compliance. Please feel free to turn your microphones on or to use your chat if there's a topic that you want to weigh in on. If there's a comment or concern or question that you have, please feel free to unmute yourself. We do really appreciate the conversation and the great dialogue that occurs in these meetings, and please feel free to do that. I will push us over to the agenda. Laurel Baeder is going to start us off with some exciting news. Laurel.
Good morning, everyone. So yeah, we have some pretty exciting news. 3.5 records are coming in. We've officially received records from 2 states so far. When I say records, I mean EMS records, although we have received state data sets and DEM files as well. But we have received PCRs from both Colorado and Kansas. So round of applause to both of them for being first at the gate, ready to submit, and we look forward to seeing records from everyone else soon.
Thanks, Laurel, and congratulations to Colorado and to Kansas. That is really exciting. I know that was a considerable amount of work.
Yeah, Julianne, maybe just one comment from Kelly Clark. Looks like South Dakota is this week as well, so great news.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Eric, did you have something?
No, the same comment.
Okay.
Beat me to it.
All right. Next on our agenda, we're going to turn a little bit of time over to Josh Legler. Josh is going to talk to us for a few minutes about Performance Measures web service and dashboard update.
All right. Thanks, Julianne. I'll go ahead and share my screen if I can. Okay. We wanted to let you all know of some updates we made to the Performance Measures web service and dashboard. In 2021, NHTSA, which is the national organization, the National EMS Quality Alliance, they're the national organization that publishes these EMS performance measures. So last year, they made updates to the performance measure definitions and specifications to support NHTSA 3.5. And so, of course, that's important that we get those rolled in so that as NHTSA 3.5 records are coming into the national database, they'll be included in the Performance Measures web service and dashboard. So NHTSA made updates to support 3.5. We have implemented those updates as of a few weeks ago in the Performance Measures database. Then there were also, while NHTSA made updates to support NHTSA 3.5, they also made some other minor updates to some measures, adding an ICD-10 code here and there, little tweaks like that. So we've implemented those adjustments as well. There were also a couple of big changes that NHTSA made, and it had to do with these 2 pediatric measures here, the pediatric respiratory assessment and the administration of beta agonists for pediatric asthma. Those measures have actually been renamed. So as I flip to the new version, we have Respiratory 01 for the pediatric, or for respiratory assessment, and Asthma 01 for administration of beta agonist for asthma. And then what NHTSA did is they said, we're going to introduce this concept of populations. So you can run the measure, for example, respiratory assessment, you can run that measure on all patients. It's relevant to adults as well as peds. And then you can stratify it by population. So you can look specifically at peds, how you're doing there, or at adults, how you're doing there. So we have implemented the changes to the overall measures. So these measures now include all ages rather than just pediatrics. That means that the data historically on these two measures, well, on all these measures was rerun, but on these two measures in particular, the historical data becomes significantly different because of the huge additional population that was brought in when those measures were respecified. So significant changes to those two measures. Now, what we have not yet implemented in this service here is the population stratification that NHTSA added to their specifications last year. So that's coming up on the work plan for this coming year, so that just like you can break them down by type of service or by agency level of service or organization type, you'll be able to drill into these by patient age, adult or pediatric. So we'll add that ability, but it's not there yet. So that's the update to the performance measures. And I would encourage y'all to check those out, and also really keep in mind if you've done any integrations that you're going to be seeing two of those measures actually have different titles and different names now. Any questions on the performance measures? Okay, great. Julianne, I think Clay and I have the next one.
Yes, you and Clay have the next topic for trauma triage update.
Okay. I'll throw this up. I don't know, Clay, if you wanted to preface anything before I jump into details.
You know, the only thing I'd add is that we met with the Data Managers Council of NHTSA last week, and there was an interest in us moving forward with making some type of a plan to allow for the 2021 trauma triage guidelines to be implemented in version 3.4 and 3.5. So the idea, or the way to do that the DMC kind of reached consensus on, was the development of two new custom elements that would be called national custom elements, with potential mapping back to the current versions of eNDRIO 3 and eNDRIO 4. Josh has done a great job of looking at what that would look like in regards to what would need to be added, changed, and mapped back. And so Josh, if you'd walk through that, that may be helpful, and we'd love to collect comments regarding this approach.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, we are going to be looking for some feedback here in a minute to help us figure out exactly how we're going to move this out. Just a reminder, national custom elements are an optional thing, and custom element data never goes to the national EMS database. So even if it's a national custom element, that does not magically make it go to the national database. So the national database is just going to be stuck receiving whatever data it can receive as states and agencies move to the new triage guidelines. So we showed this comparison to you a couple months ago, actually back in July, comparing the 2011 guidelines to the 2021 guidelines and to the current NHTSA elements for eNDRIO 3 and 04, showing some spots where it's exactly the same across all, like these two rows here. Not even a labeling changed, it just works seamlessly across. Others highlighted in green here, where it's something that was added to the triage criteria by ACS and to their 2021 criteria, and there's just not really any, it doesn't match up to something already implemented in NHTSA. And then others highlighted in yellow here, where it matches up pretty well. It was just the label is a little different, but the concept is the same. And lastly, things that just went away from in the new triage criteria, they won't be used anymore. So we've been working on ideas for national custom elements that would add custom codes for all of these green ones, the new things that were added to the triage criteria. And we've also played around with putting in these yellow ones where the label changed, but under the hood, the code would really just be the same. And it would, of course, map back to that standard code in the standard element. And I think where we want to look for some feedback is, that's great. That supports the new values. We can see what your thoughts are on this idea of putting in custom values for just relabelings. But then, the fact that some values go away and should not be shown if you're using the 2021 criteria, we may need a companion guide that would explain that. I don't know that we can communicate all of that within just a national custom element state data set. So let me show you what I mean. Here's a draft of the custom element for eInjury 03. And I've highlighted one here where it was a relabeling of a value, but it really means the same thing. So in this draft, we've put that in as a custom value, but it maps back to just the standard NMSIS custom value. You can see we've also added values, and they map back to a lot of them map to the same NMSIS value, which is just sort of a respiratory distress kind of value. We've also occasionally, there are some here where there is simply no existing NMSIS value that we can map back to. There's just nothing even close. And then, like I said, what this does not communicate is what should go away. So if a software is implementing the 2021 criteria, it needs to show a list of choices to its users. That does not include some of the old values that are going away. It should only show the list of values for the 2021 criteria. And so that back to here is the question is these white ones, right, where nothing changed, those should still be shown. These red ones where they went away, those should not be shown. But I don't know that what we should do in the custom element definition or configuration beyond what we have that would kind of communicate that. So I want to open it up to feedback from everyone. What sort of approach is going to be the cleanest and easiest to understand and implement? Again, that end goal being that if someone says we need the 2021 criteria, that they're going to see the 2021 criteria in their software and only those criteria. So thoughts on how we might tackle this?
Hi, Josh. This is Dan Lee with Illinois. How are you?
Hey, Dan. Good.
So I just wanted to clarify, I wasn't on that DMC meeting where it was decided not to make this part of the standard, at least not at this point. And I was just wondering what the rationale, that seems like the cleanest way to go is, since this is sort of the new standard from ACS and accepted by CDC, why, is it just a matter of this is at this stage, this is too large of a change to make currently or in the next revision, but it will be, made to the standard at some point? Or I don't know, I just was hoping for a little background, because that seems like the cleanest way to go, is to just bring the standard up to the new set of guidelines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, anyone who was on that DMC call maybe could chime in. I missed that call.
Hi, Dan. Hey, it's Clay. Would love to hear from some of the state data managers. That would be helpful. No, Dan, you're right. I think that would be the cleanest approach. We've been trying to circulate some ideas for a process for allowing for kind of minor revisions, Dan, right? So this, I'm not sure, Eric or Josh, would this qualify as minor? I know we're still trying to capture the idea of a minor release and what is actually included in it. But if we remove values, does it remain minor?
To make it a minor change, we would have to deprecate those values. So they would be still allowed, but marked as deprecated in the data dictionary.
Yeah. So thank you, Josh. So Dan and others, this may be a stopgap, but maybe a minor revision could come out sooner rather than later. I would call the question, is there a strong interest among the states or the vendors to just go ahead and make this be a minor revision and part of a 3.5.1? Clearly, I think the national elements will be valuable here anyway. I think some of the discussions we've been having regarding versioning of NMSIS, there's been this idea that national elements could be made quickly and or national custom elements could be made quickly, with the idea that they will mature and move into a minor revision or into a major revision based on what's being suggested for that national custom element. So this is the process, I think, that we thought was best, right? To go ahead, get it out there, socialize it as a national custom element, and then promote it. But I'll stop there, see if they're...
Hey, Clay, can I jump in here?
Yeah, please, Doug.
We're going to be adding these. These are not new. This is from 2011, and this puts NMSIS, it wedges a gap between us, patient registry, and other data sets. To me, this is just a simple fix. These are just new values. We're not asking for a new field. I think that this should be a release that people should do before everyone gets on board with 3.5. We're going to add them. We're getting requested from a lot of our state partners, our patient registry partners, our other larger clients. They want these values added. And we've been kind of holding off to determine what NMSIS was going to do, but it makes sense just to add these. Instead of waiting until 2024, 2025, we're just going to keep on separating ourselves, and we're not going to be able to compare those gaps or compare analysis between our trauma criteria and the rest of the industry standard.
Yeah, and this is Amber Vietanen from Colorado, just trying to recap some of the conversation. I remember talking about this at the NHTSA meeting, and I think part of the hesitation was, as states, when we talked about how each of us already use this field, it seems like there's either folks aren't using it at all or they're doing customization themselves, and there wasn't really an agreed upon sort of trauma triage criteria that all states said we use it, yes, exactly in this way. So I think that was part of the rationale for lowering it on the priority list. And honestly, I think folks cringe a bit at the idea of having a 3.5.1 already, as everyone's trying to push out 3.5. So to echo, I think what Clay said, I think that's kind of where we landed is this was a good intermediate solution that allows folks to collect the data, and then we can do some more kind of analysis on how much it's being utilized, and if we do want to make that minor revision, or if everybody's needs are satisfied by this national custom element. I think that's kind of where we landed. I see Clay nodding, so I'm not super crazy, but I'm sure others can add to it.
My concern with being a national custom element is now coming down the road in about 2 to 3 years. Everyone's going to want the report on it. So if we do make this minor change and we put it back into E-Injury 3 and 4, the vendors are all going to have to go move that data and say, okay, now I want historical reporting. Can you just migrate this data? So now we just kind of muddied the waters with reporting capabilities. So I don't know, from our perspective, we rather just add it to the correct element versus adding a national element that does the same thing and talks about the same criteria. So now we have 2 questions in NMSIS that actually are the same. And that would be our concern about adding it as a national custom element.
Yeah, just to clarify, the current proposal is to create these 2 custom elements that would be extensions of E-Injury 03 and 04. So as implemented in your product, you would be adding choices to E-Injury 03 and 04. But without the standard being updated, it means that you would be exporting and importing those new choices through the custom element structure in the XML data.
So this is Dan again. It seems like the big loser from the custom element approach is actually the NMSIS National Repository, right?
Yeah.
Which, we all, I mean, obviously you guys care about that, but I think we at the state level do as well. It's an important resource.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Hey, Josh, there's a couple of comments from Ann in the chat. I don't know if she has two questions. These custom values in a new custom element would actually in practice be custom values in the existing EN03 and 04. I think Josh just answered that question. Also being national custom element, would that mean that all vendors would be required to have it available in their products, or is this something where some vendors may not have this in their customers on their front end? That's a good question, right? National custom elements, there's no process for ensuring that they're implemented. So that is a good question. As far as the values that should not be recorded in the new Triage standards, I think that would be up to the states to write into their state's schematrons not to accept certain values. Yeah, and that's a good idea there in regards to the use of custom values to ensure that some values are not used.
Yeah, and while there's certainly no requirement for anyone to implement any of the national custom elements, this would be a good candidate to throw into the compliance testing test cases.
Yeah.
Yeah, so along the lines of the compliance test cases, so if we as a vendor wanted to move to the newer standard overall, but then on the compliance test, we have one of these removed items in there, that's not compatible. So if we could say that, this is the 335 standard, but, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we're going to check these guys. That might be a little helpful.
Okay.
What do other vendors think about this approach and the comments that Doug provided from Image Trend?
I guess what will Image Trend accept? Will they combine it on their end? If we put it on the custom elements, would they accept it as the element, even though it's not the actual XSD?
David will probably accept it both ways. We're going to add those values as elements inside the actual element ourselves, and then if you send it through the custom element process, we'll process them both ways. This is what we'll do, depending on what is the decision of the group here. If they're going to go down the custom element, I think this is a perfect opportunity for us as an industry to show that NEMSIS is flexible and it doesn't take 5 years to make a change. This is just small changes, but we will accept it either way. And if the route is the custom elements, we will accept them in the XML and the custom elements. But we'll be putting these elements as normal elements in our solution too. So.
Yeah, so I definitely see the discussion around the regular releases, predictable releases, and the lead time, very valuable. The idea of a hot fix, though, also I think is, sometimes you just need to do something that needs fixed.
Yeah, thank you, David. I think that's helpful. Frank from Digitip says, we're fine with adding these with any approach, just prefer clarity. I think a kind of a hot fix or a minor release with set effective date soon would go well, right? And I agree with that too. The current schedule we've been playing with was kind of theoretical about when the next minor release would be out. We could certainly do one quicker. And Anne says, I would like it if we could go with Doug's approach. And this issue would alleviate issues with retraining crews right after initial training on 3.5. As most won't go to 3.5 for a while. Right, yeah, so you're saying the training piece of this could include this piece if we were to do a minor release quickly. Or custom values, right? I think the training will happen regardless, yeah. Except for those who have gone to 3.5. Yep. Yeah, thanks. Amber. That's right. That's right. And Amber in Colorado has folks that have gone, that have migrated and are submitting data.
So if we go the minor release route, then we're going to run into all the other pending changes. Whereas a hot fix, we can justify just fixing one element. Whereas if we have a whole backlog and we're these three are kind of just require more discussion, and it kind of might push out the schedule further even with a minor release.
Yeah, thanks, David. And there clearly are other issues that are really pressing. So this is one of a couple that are pretty strongly being pressed right now. One is related to adding pertinent negatives to the assessment of race, for example. There's some states, Peter in New York is making some changes on something like that. You're right. So we'd need to demarcate what that would be. And from Arizona says, we will have the same issue as Colorado very soon, but I still think nationally for the majority of states, it would make sense. Yeah. Yeah.
And this is Dan. And one thing we can say about this particular set of guidelines is it's coming from a good authority, from a good source, a well-respected source. There's nothing controversial about it. And also their track record, it's not something they do lightly or often. The last time was 10 years, 10 years from this one. So once we get it in place, it shouldn't be, we shouldn't probably have to worry. We can't say for sure, but we shouldn't have to worry about it again for quite some time.
Yeah, and I want to call attention to what Jay said in the chat. And I just have concerns. Well, I shouldn't say concerns. The idea of releasing minor updates, I still think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to figure out what that looks like, who needs to be involved, what kind of approval process that goes through. As Jay mentioned, I think we're working on a process to make changes with approval of state directors. And I know some of us who have restrictions in the way that our rule set works, implementing a minor update is actually quite difficult at a state level. If you don't, for example, we have to rewrite our rule set every time we push out a new or we want to require a new NHTSA standard. So if it were a minor update, we can't actually implement it until we go through our full stakeholder process and rule change. So I just, while I agree that I think it logically makes sense to move forward in this way, I think there's a lot of behind the scenes work that probably still needs to be figured out before we can decide that a minor update is exactly what we can do right now. Maybe I'm just trapped in the bureaucracy in Colorado, but worth bringing up.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Amber. Other states? Felicia mentions that their requirements aren't as strict as Colorado, but they will need to run these the education with agencies and the EMS committee here in the state for buy-in.
Yeah, and I was going to mention, on that training piece too, as well as this approval side. We're looking at two things, right? A technical change, collecting some new data and not collecting some other stuff. But the whole question of when does an agency decide to actually implement the new guidelines, right? That's like on the clinical and operational side of the fence. And that's, so those are decisions that'll have to be made at the local and state level that are kind of, they're related to this technical change, of course. But anyway, just to point out that training is more than saying, hey, there's going to be some new values for you. Training is also, hey, it's a new actual guideline.
No, that's a good point, Josh. And in Illinois, we don't have to actually, change our schematron or anything technical. We don't have to go through admin rule changes. But the adoption, what you're talking about, actually adopting these new guidelines in EMS practice, that was just approved by our state Trauma Advisory Council and EMS Advisory Councils, both of them. And they're actually pushing us to go in that direction. But they're just advisory councils. So then we still have to adopt these changes in our administrative rules. Again, not how we do things with our data collection, but in terms of EMS practice. And then even once it's in the rules, there has to be a rollout in terms of implementation and everything like that. So it takes some time. So I'm just kind of echoing, adding a little example to the point you just made.
Yeah, and ideally, we would like the data collection capability to be out in front of the practice change, right? So that as the practice changes, we've already got the ability. But yeah, they're a little bit decoupled.
Yeah.
Josh, is this spreadsheet out available?
Yeah, I think it was shared by email.
Okay.
We can certainly share it out again. Happy to do that on the Google group. We'll do that today.
I think from the vendor perspective, we're going to add these. If we know what the NEMSIS 3.5 codes are going to be, that would help save us a lot of time.
Yeah.
From thinking outside of the NEMSIS world and kind of the bureaucracy of kind of state managed chambers, hospitals have adopted. They have to adopt these standards. When they get reaccredited, they have to apply the 2021 standards. And I'm looking at right now, I have 87 requests from different clients to add these values to our system. So we're going to add them to meet the needs of the clients. Also, our patient registry clients are looking for these values so that our imports go back and forth, that they have those new values, what the agencies are working on so they can meet their requirements and standards. I would just kind of, as we kind of look at these, if we minor release or whatever we're going through, the industry is going to change standards. And as we got to kind of better define that release cycle. I know that we're going to add more releases, but if the ACS or any other organization releases something, are we going to always be constantly 3 to 5 years behind? And I think that's something we need to discuss kind of the NEMSIS and with the DMC, is to figure out a better mechanism to change our list quicker, to be more relevant in the evolving world of healthcare, and not always being so far behind.
And Sherry from Montana said that they're rolling out training over the next few months on the new guidelines with January 2023 date to switch over.
Do we have any other changes coming down the pipe? I know there was something about GCS was changing. Any other things that are kind of that might affect NEMSIS in the next few years?
Yeah, there were some changes to GCS, but I think they're still not well adopted. So I think that's one of the items that is in the current list of potential changes, but it isn't kind of like smacking us in the face like this one is. So yeah, you're right, David, and you made the comment earlier, right? We'd need to define kind of what would be included in this minor release. There are other things that seem a little bit pressing. But what I am hearing is, regardless of what we kind of end up doing here, I think we will do the national custom elements. Like Doug was saying, this at least provides the pattern, right? That all the vendors can look at and see, well, what codes will be used? What will be mapped at? How will legacy data be handled? I mean, this is all value associated with having the quote national custom elements structure put together. We'll reach out to Eric. I know he's facing a number of important issues right now, including the fact that the hurricane is passing very near to his home. So I know he's very busy with that right now, but we'll bring this information back to him, this discussion. And then we may need to just more quickly kind of approve the approach that Amber and Jay were talking about, and maybe push forward a minor release, which I think was going to happen anyway, right? The theoretical charts that were shown during the implementation meeting in Park City, and we've tried to socialize. We can certainly move up that timeline that was shown on those theoretical graphs. Any further comments on this or opinions that you want to make sure are on the record and will be reviewed by the Office of VMS?
Clay, this is Dan. Just to clarify your last set of comments, that minor release would include updating e-injury 03 and 04 to meet the guidelines.
Yeah, I think if
Great.
The next minor release I'm sure would include this. Yes, yeah.
Support that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Or with David Saylor's idea, do we consider this a critical patch?
Yeah.
That includes just this one change and does not increment the version. It's 3.5.0 point something CP1 or CP3, whatever it'll be, where it, then state rules and laws that say 350, they still say 350. That anyway, worth considering, but it's that decision of, is that a critical patch or not?
From at least the people on the call, it seems like critical patches favored, actually going ahead and implementing this and then making sure that it's in the national database for research going forward. But obviously the people who are not on this call might have different thoughts. And there are those who just resist any change at all, of course.
Thank you, Dan. All right, thank you. Yeah, great conversation. Thank you. We'll move quickly on this. And so I really appreciate your patience, just letting us kind of socialize the ideas. We'll meet with the Office of VMS this week and come up with some further information, probably the beginning of next. So we'll move very quickly with this.
And if I can ask real quick, for states and vendors, if you would put in the chat what process you support. If you support a critical patch, if you support a minor release, if you support both, it just helps us to be able to quantify the predominant sentiment of this group. If you're able to put it in chat or let us know verbally, that's just really helpful. All right, if we're ready to move on to the next item on the agenda, we'll turn some time over to Monet. She's going to talk to us a little bit about the monthly activity report and then also the DUA to transition to 3.5. So Monet's got the next two topics on the call.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much. Let me make sure I get the right screen share here. Okay. I just want to talk briefly about this monthly report. The reason I'm going to cover this report is because there were questions during the annual meeting in the evaluations that asked about information that we provide. And so we are currently sending out a monthly report via the Google group, and we also post this information on the DMC, what is it called, Basecamp platform. And what you'll see in the monthly report is a general summary of some great information. It does not contain everything that we're doing here at the TAC, but high-level information. And so you'll see the number of records in the database for version 3. You'll see the number of events based on year-to-date, the participating territories or states and territories, and then the number of agencies. We have a little summary here about the annual meeting. If you want to review the implementation calls, we provide a link to those, the calls, as well as the monthly trainings and the number of participants. And I'll just continue to scroll through this report so you can get a general idea. There have been some specific information that has been requested about which software companies are currently in what stages of the compliance process. And so we provide a summary of those companies, those software vendors, what they're testing for, if they're doing a recertification, as well as the product number, so you can have a high level overview of that. And then we also provide all of the new or the software vendors that are in 3.5 for both receive and process, as well as the collect data product. The link to the information is always available in this report and on the NHTSA website. So we provide that direct link to the information. This page, we're just showing you the transition to the 3.5 standard. So this map will change as I am currently preparing the September report. And then this next page that I want to talk about is one of the specific things that was asked for during the annual meeting. Someone asked, where do we find the publications? And so we have a section in here that describes the most recent publications. And this information is also available on the NHTSA website. Now, if there's something that's missing from this report that you feel is critical to the larger stakeholder community, please send us an email and let us know what you would like included in this report, or if you have any other additional suggestions about this report. I'll take a pause and ask if there are any questions. Let me just check the chat really quick. Are there any questions about this report? Okay, thank you. I will go ahead and move on to the next topic, and that is the data use agreement. What I decided to do this time is to create sort of a guide, because I recognize that on the website itself, there is not that much information about the data use process. So if any state manager would like this information, I'll be happy to send it to you. Basically, you can go to the NHTSA website, nhts.org, and I'm going to show you how to find this particular information. I want to bring up that the data use, or the DUA, is an acronym for data use agreement. In some states, it might be called data sharing agreement. There are other times when I've seen it referred to as a business associate agreement. There's various terms that are used in the states and in the territories to identify this contract about what will be shared, who's involved, and all the legalities around the data use agreements. This document will also be used when we apply for IRB approval, which is internal review board approvals in various states. And there are currently 2 states that have an IRB approval process rather than a DUA process. And those usually require an annual or biannual review. So if you go to the NHTSA website, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to the tab that says using EMS data, and then you can go ahead and click there. The next tab you're going to look for, it says state data use agreements. And then once you're on that state data use agreements page, you're going to scroll down towards the bottom of the page until you see the version 3 data use agreement document. It's going to be in a section that looks like this, and it's a PDF document. One thing I want to emphasize at this time is that the data use agreements, the DSAs, the IRBs are legal documents that the organization's legal counsel should review. However, we do want the state managers to be familiar with these documents, because you are the individuals who will submit these documents to your state directors or to your legal counsel for review and then signature. So the first section of the document, once you open that, is you're going to see a paragraph that describes the parties that are involved in the data use agreement. And I've highlighted those here. You're going to see the University of Utah, because we're hosted at the University of Utah, and so they're part of this agreement. You're going to see the National EMS Information Technical Assistance Center, which is also known as the TAC. You're going to see NHTSA's Office of EMS. And so it's important to recognize that each of these parties, including the state, I apologize, I forgot that the state is also a member of this agreement, the state or territory. The HIPAA Act of 1996 is what allows us to request the data into the National Repository. And then I want to talk a little bit about the additional pages, which the first section you'll see is the recital sections, which describes the responsibilities of the partners or the parties. The article section provides definition of the terms. And then this section here where we're going to obtain the appropriate signature. Most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, these data use agreements are signed by the state EMS director. There are other times when someone in the legal department will sign these documents. This is where you are going to have a conversation with your director and others in your team to find out who's the most appropriate person to sign this document and to be in legal agreement with the NHTSA, the University of Utah, NHTSA's Office of EMS. And then the section that I really want to highlight today is the appendix section, which describes the national elements, the national subset that we're asking you to submit. And so this is the section where you're going to basically review this information. And then I believe you'll feel confident as well as having this conversation with your director to say, this is the subset of national elements that are required that the NHTSA is asking us to submit. Do you approve of these elements? Are we currently collecting these elements? If in fact you're not collecting all of the elements, that's okay. This document will also be really instrumental when you're looking at your state data set. Because if you see that this list here provides the elements that we're requesting, it will really be quite simple for you to say, okay, this is the same subset of elements that I want in my state data set. Now, again, this is a very high level overview of this particular, of this information. But if you have any questions, if there's anything that you're not certain of, please don't hesitate to send us an email with DUA in the subject line, and we will address those concerns. My process at the University of Utah is the document has already been drafted by our legal counsel. We've also engaged PWW for their input and advice on some of the legal terminology. And so this document is ready. It's a template. However, if there are changes that your legal counsel is suggesting, please send those to us, redlined, of course, in the initial document, and we will review those comments, those modifications, and we will return the document with our findings, and then we'll just keep the process moving. Now, I also recognize that there is at least one state manager on the call, and we're in the process of clarifying or resolving a signature issue. I thank you for your patience, and I definitely will return the document to you as soon as I'm able to resolve the issues. But again, this document is important because the University of Utah wants to know all the states that are submitting data to us. And so this is also for your legal protection at the state as well, just to identify the terms of what data you're submitting, how we're going to secure the data, how long we're going to hold the data, those type of questions. So thank you for letting me share. I will stop the share at this time and ask if there are any questions. Okay, and Chris Hoffman actually put the link to the document in the chat. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Monet. Next on our agenda, we're going to have Jen Correa talk to us for a few minutes about consistency for eRecord 02 and eRecord 04 for vendor software version values. Jen, take it away.
All right, good morning. I did put the link to the vendor reports on the NHTSA.org website into the chat as well, in case there's anyone on the call who has not visited. Super easy to find. When you go to the NHTSA page, view reports, software vendor reports. The one I'm going to specifically refer to is down here, the vendor data submission dashboard report. So for e-record 02, 03, and 04 in the submission files, that is where we pull the values that are displayed in this report. So it's super important that you make sure those are kept updated and consistent with your company name and your software name, as well as the version that's being utilized. Access to these reports is given based on the company name. So it's another reason that it's important to keep the company name in eRecord 02 consistent and up to date. As you can see, when you open the report, the software package and the software name, eRecord 02, eRecord 03, show up, as well as the version. You can see the warnings that come from each different version that you have. So you can see if maybe a change that you made between the versions is affecting things. In the other tab, which is the comparison and trend tab, you have the software creator here, right? And you can see that information. So it's one of the reasons why we're putting it out there is that there has been some inconsistencies, or there will be a comma before ink, or there won't be a comma before ink. That's the type of thing you want to take a look at and just make sure that all of the records that you're submitting are coming in with the same spelling, with the same punctuation, and you keep it as consistent as possible. And that is about it. If there are any questions, or you need me to look up how your information has come in, or you need to just take a look and see if you have access to your vendor report, please send me an email, contact me, go to the NHTSA.org website, and we will make sure that you get any information that you need. And that is about it, unless anyone has any questions.
Jen, this is Clay. Thanks for that presentation. Hey, maybe on an unrelated topic, Jen, but maybe I'm kind of putting you on the spot. Perhaps you could just let folks know a little bit about the billing focus group that you're putting together and its purpose. Perhaps just keeping folks in the loop there might be helpful as well. Could you talk just a couple minutes about that?
Oh, absolutely. So next week is our very first inaugural meeting on the 4th. We have a group of about 21 billing folks that have accepted this new stakeholders group. And the reason we're putting it together is we really do want to hear from all of the different parties and stakeholders that utilize the NHTSA standard. And the billers do. A lot of the services will submit the data in NHTSA format. There's transfers going back and forth. And then there's also the whole e-payment section. And one of the things we may not have all the information we need is in that section. So we want to talk to the billers. We want to hear what they think. We want to hear how they're using. For me, I don't have a lot of familiarity with the billing processes. So a big part of it for me is just getting more information on how it's being utilized. Are the NHTSA elements being ingested into their software, or are they getting PDFs, but it's set up? Exactly how are they looking at it? What can we do to improve the standard that makes it more usable for the services and easier, streamlined? And me, right? I'm a big fan of the interoperability. So someday down the line, maybe a interoperability between the PCR and the billers, so that the e-payment section can be populated automatically and not be put on the crews. So, that's my pipe dream. And I realize that's years down, but that's kind of where we're going. If there is anyone who has not received the invitation and wants to be on it, please send me an email. I'm more than happy to get everyone involved. And I'm just looking forward to hearing from this group. And I hope that was what you were hoping for, Clay.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Thanks, Jan.
And I don't see anything coming up in the chat, so I will toss it back to Julianne.
Thank you, Jen. Next on our agenda, Kevin White's going to talk to us for a couple of minutes about Tableau subscriptions and a few changes that we have in place for those email subscriptions. Kevin?
Well, thanks, Julianne. Yeah, as many of you know, we update all of our dashboards every week over the weekend. And starting next week, we are moving the timing of this weekly refresh from Sunday to Monday. We expect all dashboards to be updated no later than Tuesday morning. In conjunction, we are also moving and consolidating dashboard email subscriptions. If you normally receive a subscription email on Monday, starting next week, you will receive the same email on Tuesday. If you have accidentally subscribed to receive an email from a dashboard more than once a week, even though, as I said, those dashboards only update once a week, we will be reducing this to only once a week so that you don't receive the same email multiple times in a week. Finally, if you have any questions about how to subscribe or perhaps how to unsubscribe to a dashboard in your email, please let us know. We'll be happy to guide you through the process in either direction. Thank you. And any questions on that? All right, I think back to you then, Julianne. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Next on our agenda would be items from the Office of EMS, but I think Eric had to step away. Clay, was there anything specific that you recall Eric wanted to touch on during this call?
Not that we haven't already discussed.
Okay.
I can't think of anything in addition.
Okay. So our next upcoming event is Tuesday, October 4th, State Created Resources for 3.5 Transition. Lauri has invited a few different state data managers to share products that they've created that have been helpful for implementing 3.5 in their state. This is going to be a really fun training for anyone who's working on that 3.5 implementation. If you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to any of us at the TAC or reach out to Lauri directly. The invitation for that and the connection information went out through Google Group. Also, if you have any trouble with your Google Group notifications, holler and we'll help you through that. I know we had some issues with those emails getting blocked in people's spam folders a while back. So we do a lot of communication through the Google Group. Next on the agenda is open forum. Are there any questions, comments, concerns that anyone from this group would like to bring forward at this time? All right. Our next meeting will be October 12th, same time, same place. Let us know if there are topics that you would like added to the agenda that may pertain to this group. Usually if one or two stakeholders have a question, there are several others that have that same question as well. So we try and address those as they come in and be able to share that information or engage in that conversation as they come up. Thank you, everyone, for being with us this morning. We appreciate your participation. Please reach out with any questions or concerns. We're happy to help in any way that we can. Be safe and have a great day, everyone. Thank you.